In recent months, the American political and economic landscape has been gripped by a series of dramatic developments that have left both domestic and global markets in a state of confusion and unease. At the center of this unfolding saga stands former President Donald Trump, whose return to the national spotlight has stirred a cauldron of controversies, policy reversals, and economic uncertainties. In a recent phone interview with NBC News, President Trump stated that he couldn't care less if his auto tariffs cause prices to rise, a comment that encapsulates the growing disconnect between the lofty rhetoric of leadership and the everyday struggles faced by millions of Americans. The answer to whether this incipient policy represents a genuine step forward for the nation or merely the latest twist in an unpredictable political drama remains uncertain. As the former president dubs April 2nd as Liberation Day, a day on which he promises that America will reclaim both money and respect, one cannot help but wonder if the announcement is less about transformative economic renewal and more about a deeply personal quest for legacy and relevance. The rhetoric associated with this so-called Liberation Day is stirring memories of a simpler time, as some analysts note that the average tariff rate on imports to the United States, which stood at about 8% in 1947, is poised to leap from its current level of below 2% back to that historical figure. This sudden reversal, dressed in the guise of patriotism and national pride, appears to be anachronistic in a modern economy where global supply chains form the backbone of virtually every industry, from traditional automotive manufacturing to the advanced microchip supply network essential for cutting-edge electronics. The proposed tariffs, by design, are meant to incentivize consumers to buy American-made products, specifically cars. However, a closer examination reveals that the practical outcome is likely to be a nightmare for American households, as the cost of products, particularly automobiles, is expected to skyrocket. In fact, it is estimated that auto prices could increase by anywhere between $2,000 and $15,000 per car, a change that may transform the dream of owning a quintessential American vehicle into a waking nightmare of overwhelming installment payments. This scenario is further complicated by the fact that many critical components, parts, materials, and electronic chips are sourced from abroad, meaning that the tariffs, rather than shielding American jobs and businesses as claimed, will simply transfer the burden of rising costs onto the consumers. As we find ourselves caught between the promise of a reborn American industry and the harsh economic reality dictated by global interdependence, it becomes increasingly clear that the American automobile dream is morphing into a high-stakes gamble for the average buyer. Adding another layer of complexity, our northern neighbor Canada now finds itself in the crosshairs of these expansive tariff policies. Under previous trade agreements hammered out during Trump's earlier tenure, a period marked by boasts of having secured the best trade deal ever, characterized by promises of no drugs, no illegal immigration, just wood and milk, Canada now appears to be facing a barrage of tariffs that threaten to destabilize an already fragile economic equilibrium. Questions naturally arise when one considers the implications of targeting a key trade partner. Is this move a result of a grave mistake, a miscalculation in policy, or is it yet another bold, albeit reckless step in Trump's pursuit of a grandiose vision? Experts warn that as many as 90% of global trade could be affected by these tariff policies, a statistic that not only underscores the magnitude of the potential economic disruption, but also highlights the risk of a cascading global backlash. In an ironic twist, while the president extols the virtues of a golden age for America, the reality on the ground tells a far more cautionary tale of retaliatory measures from trade partners, supply chain blockages, soaring production costs, and a dangerous march toward stagflation. This already precarious situation is compounded by a growing sense of policy inconsistency that has become synonymous with Trump's approach to governance. The former president is known for changing strategies as often as one might change outfits, and his recent record is no exception. One day he announces sweeping global tariffs, and the next he appears to advocate for price stability among car manufacturers, even as tariffs are being enforced. Such erratic policy directions have sown confusion and uncertainty among businesses, discouraging long-term investments and ultimately freezing economic progress. This lack of a coherent strategy has not only undermined investor confidence, but has also left American households in a constant state of anxiety as they brace for unpredictable price shocks. The absence of a clear, stable economic roadmap is a recipe for stagnation, where the real cost of political indecision is ultimately borne by the people at large. In the midst of these sweeping changes, the former president seems more intent on indulging his own narrative than on addressing the real needs of the nation. Whether it is through making light of crossroads in economic policy or engaging in bizarre press conferences where he laments his unfamiliarity with words as simple as kind, a term he admitted sounded like something from the Stone Age, Trump appears more preoccupied with cultivating an image of himself rather than confronting the grim realities facing the country. His remarks, which drift between humor and derision, have drawn sharp criticism from economic experts who argue that his policies, rather than fostering growth, have plunged the U.S. economy into an uncertain future. A sober look at the numbers reveals that stock markets have plummeted, inflation has soared, and GDP is projected to drop by 2.8%. Meanwhile, American families, already grappling with rising living costs, declining welfare support, and job losses, are forced into a daily battle against economic hardships that seem to be escalated by each erratic policy declaration. In many ways, the current state of the nation under Trump's approach seems to be a dramatic opera of contradictions, where lofty promises of a golden age are belied by the tangible, deteriorating conditions that now define American socioeconomic life. The narrative is peppered with darkly ironic details. While some supporters envision the return of past glories, factories are shutting down and consumers are forced to tighten their belts. Healthcare and education costs are becoming insurmountable burdens, forcing families into distressing decisions such as selling homes, cars, and even dipping into long-saved funds. One cannot help but note the grim humor in the situation. It's almost as if the nation is stuck in a tragic sitcom where, despite the former president's repeated assurances and even lighthearted quips, the punchline is delivered not by laughter, but by the mounting expenses and hardships shaking the very foundation of everyday American life. Adding to the surreal nature of these developments is Trump's continued pursuit of controversial actions that have far-reaching implications on both domestic policy and international relations. Among these is the disconcerting handling of immigration, where actions such as the forcible deportation of immigrants without proper legal procedures have not only violated human rights, but have also raised alarming questions about the administration's respect for the rule of law. In one particularly contentious episode, a female student was removed from the street by ICE agents without charges or explanation, while 17 other immigrants were clandestinely sent to El Salvador without court approval. When challenged about these decisions, Trump responded with a cold indifference, stating he hadn't looked into it closely and would check later. Such cavalier responses belie the stark reality that these policy missteps directly impact the lives of vulnerable populations and further erode the public's trust in a system designed to uphold justice and human dignity. The saga does not end with domestic policy alone. Global repercussions have begun to surface as well. The Trump administration's unpredictable tariff strategy has not only alienated key trade partners like Canada, but has also sent shockwaves through international markets. The global economic community, from China to South Korea and Japan, is mobilizing in response to what many analysts describe as policy paralysis and economic brinksmanship. Many experts caution that if these trends continue unchecked, the world could soon face a severe economic downturn marked by the perils of stagflation, a dangerous interplay of rising inflation and stagnant growth. In one televised phone interview, a leading economic advisor was asked about the future trajectory of these policies, and his stark reply, "I don't know what's going to happen this week," encapsulates the pervasive uncertainty that now defines the international economic landscape. The internal turmoil within the U.S. federal apparatus further exacerbates the prevailing sense of crisis. Instances such as the Signalgate scandal, where sensitive military strike plans were discussed over an unsecured app, have exposed glaring vulnerabilities in national security protocols. The revelation that key intelligence and strategic communications were potentially accessible to adversaries in Russia has raised serious questions about the administration's capacity to safeguard not only confidential information, but also the security of the nation. Likewise, the abrupt disappearance of Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who was supposed to be the face of Trump's economic agenda, only deepens the mystery and concern regarding the administration's commitment to transparency and accountability. His refusal to appear before the media, coupled with the rise of a new spokesperson with a murky past, amplifies the perception that there is little in the way of clear, consistent policy direction coming from the highest echelons of power. Adding to the dramatic tableau of a nation on the brink is Trump's controversial flirtation with the idea of running for a third presidential term, an ambition that defies the explicit constitutional limit of 2 terms. In an offhand comment delivered with a wry chuckle, he mentioned that he had heard there's a way to bypass this restriction, a remark that some interpret as a joke, while others see it as an ominous signal of disregard for the rule of law. Such statements not only sow further uncertainty about the future of American governance, but also fuel fears that the nation may be sliding towards a form of self-styled autocracy, a scenario that would fundamentally alter the democratic fabric of the country. It raises a poignant question. What kind of nation do we want to become when a leader appears willing to subvert the very constitutional principles that have long underpinned American democracy? Observing all these dramatic maneuvers, one cannot miss the glaring irony that while the president rants about restoring American greatness, the American people are increasingly burdened by soaring auto prices, dwindling Social Security benefits, and an overall deterioration in living conditions. Amid these swirling challenges, it is important to pause and reflect on the fact that leadership is not merely about catching headlines or enjoying the limelight of a televised press conference, however theatrical it may be, but about providing sustainable, thoughtful solutions to complex problems. As an aside, if you appreciate in-depth analysis of these turbulent times, consider subscribing to our channel and engaging with our content by liking or commenting on this video. Your support ensures that we can continue to bring you expert perspectives on the issues that matter most. The current series of events has thrust the United States into a rapidly evolving crisis, one that touches every facet of public life, from the wallets of average household to the intricate networks that sustain global commerce. With the stock market bleeding red and the USD beginning to wobble, the precarious state of the U.S. economy is unmistakable. Infrastructure investments are on the decline, while consumer confidence continues to ebb away amid daily price shocks and the looming specter of a recession. In a scenario that echoes the unpredictability of a poorly scripted drama, even supporters and traditional allies of Trump, including influential voices on networks like Fox News, have begun expressing concern over the erosion of trust in both the economy and in the democratic institutions that underpin it. For instance, Larry Kudlow, once a steadfast defender of Trump's economic policies, has had to reluctantly acknowledge that the instability is palpable and that the stock market has taken significant hits, an admission that speaks volumes about the breadth and depth of the fiscal malaise. Another facet of this multifaceted crisis is the significant cutbacks to essential welfare programs such as Medicaid and Social Security, programs that many vulnerable Americans depend upon to meet basic needs. These cuts, combined with soaring inflation, have created a perfect storm where even the middle class finds it increasingly difficult to secure a stable future. Moreover, as job markets contract and consumer spending dwindles, the cumulative impact on everyday American life is nothing short of calamitous. This dissonance between grandiose proclamations of a revived American economy and the harsh economic realities on the ground is becoming all too apparent, prompting serious questions among observers. Is Trump's so-called plan for a new golden age simply a mirage? Or will there ever be tangible benefits for the millions of Americans who are now facing the stark consequences of these policies? In the face of such ambiguity and escalating hardship, one is compelled to consider the wider implications of leadership that seems more invested in rehashing past glories and indulging in rhetorical flourishes than in steering the nation towards a stable future. The enforced deportations, the alleged cavalier statements regarding human lives, and the inexplicable fascination with unrelated topics like Tesla and Dogecoin paint a picture of a leader unmoored from the realities of governance. When lives and livelihoods hang in the balance, this apparent preoccupation with diversionary tactics, such as comparing tariff policies to tax cuts with a metaphor reminiscent of renovating a house, messy at first but getting better, comes off as painfully tone-deaf. In truth, for many Americans, the metaphor falls apart when the house in question is not merely being renovated, but is on the verge of collapse. Historical context adds a further layer of complexity to this issue. The average tariff rate on imports to the United States has undergone dramatic shifts over the decades, with tariffs once hovering around 8% when imported goods first began to play a major role in the post-World War II economy. Today, experts warn of a gradual but deliberate move to reinstate similar levels of tariffs at a time when nearly every sector of the economy is intertwined with global supply chains. This strategy, ostensibly aimed at reviving domestic manufacturing, carries the inherent risk of isolating the U.S. from crucial international markets and fostering an environment where economic isolationism could lead to long-term detriments such as reduced innovation, loss of competitive edge, and a severe devaluation of the U.S. dollar. The ramifications of such policies are not confined merely to price tags on consumer goods. They extend to the broader fabric of American society and its global reputation. As tariffs engender higher prices and stifled economic growth, the repercussions will likely manifest in reduced investment in key industries and a general downturn in production, a situation that could precipitate an economic recession of unprecedented proportions. Adding insult to injury, the very fabric of American political discourse is being strained as well, with traditional allies now finding themselves at odds with policies that appear to be guided more by personal ambition and theatrics than by rigorous economic analysis. It is in this context that the people are starting to ask themselves a critical question. At what point does the pursuit of personal legacy become so entangled with policy that it undermines the very foundations of America's prosperity? Moreover, the instability in policymaking has not gone unnoticed on the international stage. In recent weeks, the announcement of a tightened trade alliance between China, South Korea, and Japan has been met with a mixture of cautious optimism and stark concern. These nations are clearly preparing to counteract the ripple effects of the United States' renewed emphasis on tariffs, a development that could further isolate America from its key trading partners. As global markets brace for the possibility of a widespread economic slowdown, the specter of stagflation, a combination of stagnating growth and inflation, looms large over the horizon. This is not merely theoretical speculation. Economic indicators already suggest that if these trends continue, the American economy, along with that of its global counterparts, could be plunged into a prolonged period of economic malaise. One might even joke that the current economic situation is like trying to balance a checkbook on a roller coaster. Thrilling for some, but disastrous for anyone relying on stability for their day-to-day survival. At this juncture, it is essential for viewers to consider the broader implications of these policies and controversies. How do you, the audience, interpret Trump's approach to governing during these turbulent times? Do you believe that his strategy, which so cavalierly neglects the struggles faced by ordinary citizens in favor of grandiose claims of a new era, can ever result in a stable or prosperous future for America? Your insights and comments are not only welcome but vital in fostering a comprehensive dialogue about the challenges we face today. While discussing these monumental issues, one cannot ignore the increasingly theatrical dimension of Trump's public persona. Picture a former president casually standing next to Kid Rock while delivering barbs and rousing slogans. A scene that, in a surreal twist, mirrors the absurdity of attempting to run a nation as if it were a late-night talk show. In one of these peculiar moments, Trump was overheard comparing serious national matters to the lighthearted exchange of jokes typically shared over drinks. It is a scene so bizarre that one might suspect the entire political arena has flipped its script, where the stakes are incredibly high, but the performance seems to be more about spectacle than substance. Such scenarios, though they might elicit a wry smile from the cynical observer, underscore a growing disenchantment among citizens who find themselves pitted against policies that jeopardize their financial security while their leaders indulge in what many consider to be irrelevant distractions. The repercussions of this leadership style are manifold and extend well beyond the realm of mere policy debate. As federal employees are laid off, Social Security offices shut down, and support for nearly 1 million children at risk dwindles, the disconnect between political posturing and the harsh realities of economic mismanagement becomes ever more apparent. The cumulative effect of these measures is an erosion of public confidence, not only in the current administration, but in the entire system of governance. When people are forced to sell their homes, cars, and even parts of their savings to cope with ever-increasing living costs, the lofty promises of a golden age ring hollow. Instead, what emerges is a vivid portrait of a nation teetering on the brink of crisis. A nation where the rhetoric of revival is in stark contrast to the experiences of everyday Americans mired in economic hardship. Amid this backdrop of uncertainty, political insiders and economic experts alike have voiced growing concerns about the sustainability of the current approach. Former White House advisors, some of whom have even faced legal repercussions for their roles in earlier administrations, now speak with sober clarity regarding the impending dangers of unchecked policy experimentation. When tariffs are misrepresented as tax cuts, an assertion that has drawn immediate pushback from economists who emphasize that tariffs are nothing more than additional costs imposed on consumers, it becomes clear that the administration's tactics may well be driving the nation toward an economic precipice rather than a path to revitalization. The reality is stark. If the current trend continues, America might soon find itself entangled in a web of economic stagnation, regional unemployment crises, and a broader deterioration of investor confidence that will likely take years to repair. In light of these profound challenges, it becomes imperative for every American to critically assess the state of national affairs. We stand at a crossroads where decisions made in the corridors of power will determine not only the trajectory of the U.S. economy, but also the future of democratic governance itself. This is not a time for idle rhetoric or simplistic slogans. It is a moment that demands robust, informed discussion and decisive action. If this analysis resonates with you, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments section. Your engagement and perspective are crucial in shaping a future where accountability and reasoned debate prevail over spectacle and arbitrary decision-making. The unfolding crisis is multifaceted, involving not only macroeconomic indicators, but also highly sensitive issues such as national security, human rights, and the integrity of the legal system. Consider, for example, the alarm that was raised when sensitive military communications were inadvertently discussed via an unsecured messaging app, a misstep that has significant implications for the safety of national defense strategies. Similarly, reports of covert deportations and the removal of legal protections for refugees have cast a long shadow over the administration's claims of upholding America's core values. Each of these incidents, when taken individually, might seem like isolated lapses, but together they paint a disturbing picture of a government increasingly divorced from both legal norms and the everyday realities confronted by its citizens. Further intensifying this intricate web of crises is the stark contrast between public statements touting an imminent economic boom and the mounting evidence of fiscal decline. When a stock index like NASDAQ, along with the Dow Jones and S&P 500, sees red overnight with losses amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars, there is little room to argue that America is on the cusp of a renaissance. Instead, the loss of confidence in financial markets, paired with the withdrawal of investments and the contraction of economic activity, signals that the current economic policies are not only misguided, but potentially catastrophic in their long-term impact. In this context, the promise of a liberation day appears increasingly as an illusory panacea, a momentary salve on wounds that continue to deepen with each passing day. The continual stream of policy reversals and the overt disregard for established legal processes has led many to conclude that what we are witnessing is not the steady march toward renewed prosperity, but rather a plunge into an era of unpredictability and chaos. The tipping point seems near, marked by a disintegrating bond between governmental responsibility and the practical necessities of running a stable economy. As this disconnect widens, the essential question remains: can a leader who appears so preoccupied with self-aggrandizement and theatrical distraction ever truly address the critical issues facing the nation? The answer, as suggested by the mounting evidence, is far from optimistic. Across the nation, communities are bracing for more hardship as inflation continues to climb and as essential services, once taken for granted, begin to dwindle. The collapse in public trust, coupled with the tangible economic fallout, suggests that unless meaningful reforms are undertaken urgently, the prospect of a long-term recession paired with enduring socio-political turmoil looms large. By indulging in grand ambitions that border on defiant constitutional disregard, the administration risks not only economic collapse, but also a potential upheaval of the democratic system that has long been a cornerstone of American governance. In this era of uncertainty, it is critical for citizens to engage with these issues, to scrutinize the policies being advanced, and to demand accountability from those in power. As we continue to monitor these complex developments, we invite you to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on this volatile reshaping of American economic and political landscapes? Share your opinions below. Your perspective is essential as we collectively navigate these tumultuous times. In conclusion, the return of a former president who appears to be more enamored with a self-fashioned narrative than with the pragmatic concerns of economic stewardship has set off a cascade of repercussions both domestically and internationally. The promise of a reborn America, heralded on April the 2nd as Liberation Day, stands in stark contrast to the enduring economic struggles, mounting inflation, and policy inconsistencies that are now a daily reality for millions. As businesses freeze investments and households face soaring prices, the vision of American greatness seems to be swiftly fading into a cautionary tale of ambition run amok. One might even remark, if one has a taste for the ironic, that managing these policies must be like trying to conduct a symphony with half the orchestra missing its instruments. And yet, amid the chaos and uncertainty, we are reminded that now, more than ever, informed debate and active civic engagement are the keys to preventing further decline. As the world watches and analysts debate the future of America, the consequences of such policies will undoubtedly reverberate far beyond the confines of traditional political discourse. With each announcement of new tariffs, each offhand comment about constitutional limits, and each inexplicable policy reversal, the very fabric of American society and its global standing is being tested. Whether or not these tumultuous measures will ultimately reshape the destiny of a nation or simply lead it into deeper crisis remains to be seen. For now, the uncertainty stands as a poignant reminder that leadership must be grounded in transparency, consistency, and a genuine commitment to the well-being of the people. In an age where every decision can have far-reaching and sometimes irreversible implications, the stakes could not be higher. While watching this evolving scenario unfold, consider subscribing to our channel for more expert analyses and detailed examinations of the forces shaping our world. Your support helps us continue to bring clarity to complex issues, and your comments play a crucial role in enriching the dialogue around these vital topics. We encourage you to share your thoughts below. What do you believe is the most pressing challenge facing America today, and how might policymakers address it in a manner that truly benefits all citizens? This comprehensive analysis of the mounting crises triggered by erratic economic policies, controversial leadership styles, and international backlash is a clarion call to action. Genuine solutions will require not only a restructuring of tariffs and trade policies, but also a re-examination of the priorities that drive political decision-making. As we stand at this critical juncture, the choices made in the coming months will determine whether the nation can steer itself away from the impending storm or succumb to forces of instability and uncertainty. Amid the swirling rhetoric and dramatic declarations, the hard truth remains. The American people, weighed down by soaring costs and diminishing services, deserve policies that are as pragmatic as they are visionary. Without consistent, thoughtful leadership, even the promise of a golden age risks evaporating into mere fantasy. A fantasy that, if left unchallenged, could leave the nation grappling with irreversible consequences for generations to come.